Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Conscious Health podcast. And today, my co host David and I are going to dive into something that, lives in the core of all human experience. And this episode is really titled How Intuition Shapes the Vision of Life. And it's so interesting because intuition sounds like such a concept outside of ourselves, but it isn't just some mysterious whisper that kind of happens out there. I know very much that it's part of our anatomy, and it's a system that's woven into our bodies, our minds, and our spirit. And it shows up as gut instinct, in the heart as resonance, in the mind as like flashes of clarity, and through, higher soul guidance. When we learn to listen, intuition becomes our most, how can I say, reliable compass in the world that is just full of noise. So if we pair that with vision and where we're going and what we're doing, it's not just like a business plan that we have or a list of life goals, I believe, but it's like a deep horizon that kind of like lives within our soul. And we're really here to live into it. I work very much within kind of like the soul's blueprint, which covers the health, it covers our passion, our purpose, and all areas of our life. So it's important to know that this is all connected, and that vision isn't just static, it's alive. And it's, as we evolve, it evolves. And tuition is what keeps us aligned with the highest aspects of our health, I think. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yes, I couldn't agree more that intuition is something that, as you just mentioned, the we kind of feel that word as a mystical sense of not being seen or perceived in terms of the physicality, but we have this inner calling, this inner vision sometimes that we are sometimes we are even born, well, not sometimes, we are born with that. We are born but with that. I mean, some people are not in touch with that. That's why I mentioned, because some people, I think they are just trying to look what is intuition, and they are just trying to grab it from someone else, and many times
Mm-hmm.
they don't even know that it's within them. It's not what people and society dictate us. It's not what the program and the matrix
Mm-hmm.
it's going to deliver to us, but it is something bigger, higher, and stronger, let's say, that is constantly trying to guide you in the in your right
Mm-hmm.
direction, not in the right direction for many people,
Yeah.
but in
Mm-hmm.
your right direction. And I think that's when we hit the wall many times, because
Yeah.
we many times feel that we don't fit into the shape or the mold of how other people are, and we start to have questions, and we start to change our ways to fit in, and that's
Yeah.
when we lose many times this tracking system of intuition, and we let the program invade us. And no.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think the problem is that we've been trained to ignore this
Hmm.
inner system, right? We've been taught to prioritize logic, which logic is important. Like you say, prioritize kind of like that space of approval. And we start to hit this fear over truth, right? This fear over being ridiculed. And, and it's so interesting because trauma, stress, kind of like this chronic busyness, it dulls our intuitive senses, and it's not like food is the other way that dulls our intuitives. Like, processed foods tends to dull that. But the beautiful thing is that intuition is like a muscle. So, the more we use it, the stronger we get. The more you trust it, the more we get as well, is something that I always teach. So I think it would be good to explore, like, you're the science person, let's put some kind of like anatomy to this intuition, and how it guides us towards our vision. Because, like I said, it's not static. It's our, like you say, it's our inner compass that's always aligning. And an epigeneticist, Bruce Lipton, I love the way he talks about how the physical body actually, helps us with that, because we all get that nudge in our heart. We all get that, that gut, like, oh, this is horrible, or yes, I'm going to take advantage of the situation, whether we know or not. And he talks it very nicely in the sense of kind of like, he talks about our thoughts being our perception, kind of like the software that we run within our body, and, the brain being the chemist. So, we start looking at that from that perspective. And whatever we believe, it mixes into our bloodstream as chemistry. And then it tells our genes how to express that. So it's like you say, when we start not trusting our intuition or not having a vision, it starts to create discomfort and disease, because we're literally ignoring our body's intelligence that is trying to steer us towards an alignment. And I love that you put it in a way that it's trying to steer us in our own alignment, what is good for us, because not everything fits for everything either, right? And we're so different in so many ways, right? And Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about kind of like the hypothalamus as a chemist, as kind of like the master regulator between the mind and the body, which is amazing. Yeah, and he talks about this is where kind of like perception becomes biology, when we start looking at the function of the hypothalamus in itself, right? As the neurotransmitters, the hormones, all the rest of that. So it's picking up that chemistry to match, as well as the pineal gland as well. I mean, so much fluoride in the water calcifies our pineal gland. Our pineal gland is the receiver, the transmitter, I would suppose, and it's shaped like a pine cone because that's how it receives that information, right? It's like our quantum antenna that it's there to receive it. And I love the way he puts that in the sense where he says that the pineal gland really, I think, connects kind of like the bloodstream, or it's the broadcast station, of consciousness beyond the body. And our nervous system, we're always picking up information. And then we can't ignore the heart. The heart could perhaps be an antenna, and then the gut, right? Which is very important. The gut, I think, is and I think I think the last bit, because I think we think it's the brain, but the brain is really the interpreter. After all our systems receive the information, process it, and then spit it out, I really think that the brain is the final image that comes through after it's done all of this processing.
Yeah, and it's so interesting how you explore this concept in terms of the different organs in our body. And that's the beauty of intuition, that even though we can perceive it, even though we can think of it as invisible, let's say, it's an energy that is inside us, that is moving along the different kind of organs. And as you mentioned, the heart is one of the most important assets right now, that we have enlightened more and more information on how it perceives many things before any other part of our body, and then it delivers that information through the other organs. And as you mentioned, the last one to find out what is happening is the brain. But maybe it's designed that way because in the brain, or in this perception system, we also have these kind of imprinted beliefs from other people and from the same experience, let's say, the same perception that society wants to deliver to us. And if we did it the other way around, if the brain was the first to receive the information and then download it, probably many of the information couldn't be delivered in the same way, as clean as possible, let's say, and then we would be a mess. That is what happens many times. When you are too much in your head, and when you are trying to just think and analyze and or follow the rules that you learned when you were a child, and keep those beliefs, let's say, to comply with others or to belong and to be approved by others, that's when you lose alignment, and
Yeah.
that's when you lose your health, step by step. And this just happened to me the last 2 weeks, and it was a very, very hard experience, but very, let's say, informative for me.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I have the information, even though I have the let's say the background to understand what
Mm-hmm.
could happen with my body if I overdo it, if I over exercise in this case, or over stress. Well, I didn't listen. And what
Mm-hmm.
happened is that my body looked for an outlet to
Yeah.
detoxify myself, detoxify all my system. And since, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years, I think since the pandemic, I am
Yeah.
trying not to take any kind of medication, and
Yeah.
just trying to get my system, my body to recover by itself.
Yeah.
And we were speaking about this before we hit the record button, but this is extremely important for people because we are not patient with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We have lost the patience to let our bodies work in the way they are designed to work. Our
Mm-hmm.
bodies are designed to look for the health, just like Bruce Lipton is mentioning in every video that he makes, in every organ that he speaks about. He is trying to stress out and highlight the function of the body to recover, and the wisdom of the body to do it. But this
Yeah.
takes time. So when we are sick, probably, and we leave the body to work by itself, we would
Yeah.
need, let's say, 4 days to recover instead of one with the medication. Well,
Yeah.
it's not that bad having 3 more days. Of course, you are not comfortable. Of course, you are going to feel more pain, but that's the way the body recovers. And that's the way we have to adapt ourselves back to that kind of
Mm-hmm.
intuition and wisdom, because you can really track and feel these interoceptive messages, because that's the word, that's a technical
Mm-hmm.
word that is doing the body interoception. That's
Mm-hmm.
the intuitive system of the body to tell us that we are being healed, and we feel like the stage is very clear how your body
Yeah.
is healing. But we don't allow that. We skip those stages, and we take the pill, and we feel better probably in one day. Yes, but what's the cost? The cost is that you are leaving your body to be handicapped, let's say. You are handicapping your body because you don't leave
Yeah.
it work, because you don't leave it do what it's designed to do, and you interrupt the healing process.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, there's so much to unpack there as well. I think that so starting off with not listening to our intuition, I think starts to create, I suppose, static or noise. So if it was almost kind of like an antenna that's coming in, and that's why we don't get the clear picture. It's stress and kind of like you say, social conditioning, religious conditioning, whatever it is, like those stress hormones, traumas, cultural conditioning, it all becomes static. So sometimes it's hard because they distort the signals that we're receiving. And intuition feels fuzzy. It's always been dismissed, and a lot of the times it's needing to calm the nervous system so that we can get that clear reception. And a lot of kind of like meditation, walking in nature, things like that tend to help with that as well. It's like you say, when we follow our intuition, our chemistry shifts in that sense of oxytocin, I think dopamine, like all the repair hormones start to kind of like surface. But when we ignore it, it starts to move into stress. So I think it activates, I think, what is it, cortisol and kind of like the adrenaline, which starts to bring an inflammation of some sort. So we determine the picture that we create, which is important. But I think we've been so conditioned. So in these lifetimes, you talk about, well, naturally you could, allow your body to recover in 3 or 4 days, but and I'm guilty of this sometimes, in this kind of like, we're also overstretched that 4 days is too long, because we're in this kind of like, I need to do like this, in this kind of like constant kind of like fear that, okay, if I can, if this pill buys me 3 days of, perceived health, that is the thing, it's a perception of health, then, that's something I'll deal with tomorrow. And it's so interesting, because the body keeps on kind of like bringing these things up, and we keep getting that flu, we keep getting that cold, we keep getting that whatever it is, in order to slow down. So it's very important to listen to those and unpack them. But it's like you say, I think we're learning to slow down, because it's yeah, who has time for 4 days, kind of a thing. And I'm just playing kind of like devil's advocate here. And I think we're so conditioned, because busy means important sometimes, that we don't have time to slow down. And our bodies are so resilient in that sense as well, right? Until they're not, which we've spoken about in a lot of other podcasts. But it is important that, to have a vision of where we're going and what we're wanting to create, for sure. I know in my own personal life, I'm trying to slow down, because I get super excited, and I have a habit. And it's a habit. Now it's a choice, because I understand that is something that I do, but I fall into overscheduling. Right. But one thing is for sure, that when I am sick, I'm sick, kind of thing. I will kind of like take time, and I'm quite lucky. And I think I take it for granted, in the sense that the body recovers quite quickly a lot of the times. But yeah, it's quite interesting we're constantly in fight or flight. And how do we shift that into growth, repair, and resilience mode, or give ourselves permission to be able to do that? I think is quite important, because I think the body has a general way of working through stuff, and I think we find ourselves very much in burnout a lot of the time.
Yeah, and it's very, let's say, very intuitive how you mentioned two emotions that are very, very important in this process.
Mm-hmm.
One is the one of feeling this pressure, this anxiety to do
Yeah.
things, to be in the busy mode, and to not or forget how to turn off that anxiety mode of doing and
Mm-hmm.
being busy. And the other one is guilt,
Yeah.
the guilt of leaving your body repair by itself in 3 or 4
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
That's those are two emotions, and anxiety is very linked also to fear, fear
Yeah.
of missing out
Yeah.
clients, missing out money, missing out
Mm-hmm.
many things. So there are a mixture of negative emotions that overwhelm your system in addition to the
Yeah.
disease, because you are
Absolutely.
already sick. You are already sick, so you are thinking, "Oh my God, I can't get sick because I have this and this and this and this." And then you overload your system with more negative emotions, because you start to feel
Yeah.
fear, negativity, and this stress, of course, and you
Mm-hmm.
turn on to the maximum level this fight and flight response, and you overstress your system. And then there is no other choice than taking the pill. So you
Yeah.
you by yourself did the game and increased the game and over
Yeah.
exaggerated the things, just because you are conditioned, just because you are
Absolutely.
conditioned not to wait, not to have time for you, because you feel guilt,
Yeah.
and not to respect your body. And this is a very tricky word, because many times we have been conditioned not to respect our bodies and the
Yeah.
time that it takes to do any kind of thing. Right now we are talking about recovering, but
Mm-hmm.
we don't feel guilt about I mean, we feel more guilt about disrespecting other people and telling them the truth. I don't feel
Yeah.
good. I need to reschedule this session,
Mm-hmm.
or I need to take some days away because I'm
Yeah.
not feeling good. And this is the society system. That's how it
Mm-hmm.
is designed to drive you into this burnout culture and burn out
Yeah.
your body and shut down your intuitive guidance system and
Mm-hmm.
turn on the guilt, the fear, and all of these emotions that are being primed to you every day. Because every day people tell you, well, why do you have to feel bad 3 days? Why don't you take a pill? And many people told me that when I felt bad. And I said, no,
Mm.
I'm not going to do it. I know that I
Yeah.
can feel better faster if I take a pill. I know it,
Yeah.
but I don't want to. I want to feel, yeah, and it is not the playing the victim mode. It is not that.
Mm-hmm.
It is just respecting the body. And I said, no, I'm going to respect my body. I'm going to respect what it
Yeah.
says, and I'm going to respect that it will take 3 or 4 days. I don't
Yeah.
care because otherwise I will pay it, as you mentioned. I will pay it in the future because
Yeah.
your body is so good and so kind to you
Yeah.
that is going to say, okay, give me the pill. I will do my best to give you in one day your health, and it will give it to you. But guess what? In 3 or 4 months, you are going to be sick again.
Yeah.
So this is just if you add the days and over
Yeah.
a year you get sick 5 times or 6 times, that is at least 6 or 12 days that you lose
Yeah.
with medication. So
Mm-hmm.
you are damaging your body twice and you are having to rest twice the time that if
Yeah.
you let it rest and recover by itself. If we do the math, let's say. Mm.
No, you're right. And I think it's very much, I think we've reached such a quick short term return. I was speaking to a doctor the other day around Ozempic for weight loss. And it was so interesting because she was getting asked, and I said, "Look, we need to look at the long-term side effects, and we need to look at to see if it's okay for you." And I think that a lot of people turn around and went, "I don't care I don't care what the side effects are, as long as kind of like I can lose weight now." Which is so interesting because not knowing kind of like the side effects of what it is that we're putting in our body, sometimes the medicine, look, I believe there's space for all kinds of medicine, but sometimes the medicine does more damage than
Yeah.
actually allowing the body to recover, which is very, very interesting. That part of it. So I found that to be quite fascinating from that sense. And speaking about intuition and having clarity, a lot of what I do for a living is very much based on that space of intuition. And I know when I'm going through big kind of like stressful periods in my life, like moving country, I got a divorce and all the rest of that, there were certain days that I had to put, say, reschedule my clients
Mm.
because I wasn't in that right frame. Because what happens is that static starts to come in, and you actually end up doing a disservice to the people around you if you're not in that accurate space. And as it is in any kind of like intuitive kind of like, I mean, because I work within the Akashic Records, I do some mediumship and all sorts of stuff like that. It's so important to get into that zero space where you're not influencing the decision or anything like that. And that's where you can be the best of service, is when you don't have any charge to it. But I think we start to have a charge sometimes to what we want the outcome to be, that we don't actually listen to the intuition and see what the journey is when we're in that space as well, which is important because everybody a lot of the times are like, our logic mind kind of tells us, no, we have to do this. Meanwhile, your intuition is saying, no, we need to go this way, which is quite interesting. And a lot of the times we kind of like push pull, and a lot of the times logic always wins, which is because that's how we've been conditioned. It's been very much the way we've been taught, right? So now to actually drop into the heart, to drop into connecting into that intuition again becomes, for some people, it's quite embarrassing and they laugh it off. And I know we used to joke around kind of like in my world where we call it woo woo. So it's quite funny because I have a friend of mine who I used to go hiking with when I still lived in Canada, and she's totally not into all of the spiritual health stuff. And it's so funny because we'd have these most amazing conversations while we were walking up and down the mountain. And she'd be like, you know what, you say exactly the same as what the psychologist on our team says, but you just use different words. And she'd be like, you say exactly the same thing as, X, Y, and Z says, but it's just in different words. But once in a while, she would phone me and she'd go, okay, my daughter's had a cold for the last, 3 weeks. The medicine's not working. What would you do in the land of woo-woo? And I said, okay, well, depending on what it is, like, here are some natural remedies. Maybe you can try this. And then she called me back 2 days later and she goes, oh, this stuff actually works. I was like, of course it does, kind of a thing. So I found it to be like very, very interesting from that perspective as well. And it's quite beautiful because there's a lot of science that's catching up to that space of intuition with kind of like things like heart math, where you start to see things in like more of a tangible way. Quantum science is starting to pick things up as well. And I think with what's happened, especially after COVID, I think a lot of people have started looking for more natural remedies, and connecting back into the natural way of looking at their health, which is important. The other thing is like our food is the best chemicals that we can put in our body. So there's also, there's a whole different industry of looking into when it comes to, intuitive eating, our health, and all sorts of things like that as well.
Yeah, it is. It is so important that our intuition is not only in our health; it's also in the way we want to live our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Because many times, well, I have been asked sometimes, why did I choose to do what I'm doing right now? This podcast, writing the books that I wrote,
Mm-hmm.
leaving the corporate jobs, leaving this kind of safety net, even quitting teaching, and all of those things that I have left behind. And I always answer because it's not what I really love to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, it's not that I don't love teaching. I love teaching, but I don't love, let's say, complying with the education system that
Yeah.
doesn't allow students to think, to reflect, and to get to their own answers. They just want to memorize and to know how can they have a 10 and
Mm-hmm.
how can they obtain the grade and the paper, and that's it. And many corporate jobs also lead you to the end result, and you don't even know what you are doing in that kind of work or what is your
Yeah.
contribution to the big landscape. But you are just doing this monkey work, let's say, and you don't question that, and you don't ask yourself, how do I want to live when I get to 60, when I get to
Yeah.
70? What is the kind of life that I envision for myself and that I want to create and that I want to shape? And
Mm-hmm.
this is the vision. And the vision that we have for our lives, I think, is fed by our intuition of
Absolutely.
how we want to live. So if we don't ask these kind of questions that are, of course, uncomfortable and they are difficult, and you need time to reflect, you won't get to your alignment. You will be constantly misaligned, and
Mm-hmm.
you run the risk of being frustrated and many times angry or feeling stuck in your life because you are not doing what you want. You are just
Yeah.
surviving, no?
Absolutely. Like, I believe that the soul has our life mapped out before we were even born, and it picks up the characteristics, the gifts, everything. It's called the soul's blueprint. And it's so interesting because the navigation tool for that blueprint is our intuition.
Mhm.
And a lot of the times when we feel stuck, like you say, or when we have these health issues that surface, is because we're not living our blueprint, we're not living our purpose, we're not living our passion. And that starts to create disease, discomfort, and ailments in the body in order for us to stop. Like when we're lost and we're driving, we stop. We look at the map. We you know, like we allow it to kind of like, find the new route, but we stop. And I think our body does exactly the same thing in the sense of just like, just stop, realign, go within. Where is it that we're wanting to go? Are we still wanting to keep going in this direction? Because a lot of the times we living somebody else's passion, somebody else's vision. And I think that starts to really affect our health because we're not living our map. We're lost. And then we get tired because just like we get lost up a mountain and all of a sudden now we have to, scale a couple more, summits in order to get on track again. We get tired. But a lot of the time is we're trying to navigate somebody else's map. So I agree with you in the sense that intuition and following that is very, very important because that's the other thing is having that vision and that alignment, it regulates our gene expression, right? Living without vision, we're living in our defense mode constantly. We're shutting down in order to repair, which is, yeah, it's that vision, that knowing, and it's okay when our bodies become off track, right? It's okay, but it's okay to stop and go, okay, I'm going in the wrong direction. What's the next direction that we need to go into?
And it's really interesting how we are now during this conversation creating these guiding ideas that right now
Mm-hmm.
that you mentioned that our intuition will deliver us what we need. I was thi-
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking I mentioned that I was sick, and the disease that I had was an infection, was a diarrhea. No,
Mm-hmm.
when I look up the word diarrhea in Louis Hayes, uh,
Mm-hmm.
that says the emotions that you feel when you have diarrhea, there were three words: fear, rejection, and rejection, and I don't know what I did with my fingers, but okay. Well, let's stay with rejection. Rejection was one of the words that resonated with the kind of disease that I was having, because
Mm-hmm.
just 1 week or 2 weeks ago, before the disease, I was fired from the university. And I was fired from the university because they rejected the way I think and the way I want to educate students. And I felt angry, of course, and probably, and this is on a subconscious level, probably I was fearful that I was not going to find another job in teaching
Mm-hmm.
because they can do whatever they want and just mark me with their own systems, no?
Yeah.
So probably I didn't allow myself to feel those two emotions that were strong, but I kept them there.
Yeah.
And when I was relaxed in the vacation mode that I was going to take,
Yeah.
my body said, well, there are two emotions here that you need to release. Don't forget about them. So
Yeah.
I will allow you to do it. And then the disease comes.
Yeah.
So
You're right.
we have these kind of explanations and we have these kinds of emotions that we think that we are feeling, but
Mm.
with the same pace of life, we don't have time to feel them. We have to keep moving with the other things because I was fired, but I had other things to do and I had other job to deliver. So I was busy with those things and I didn't think too much into those kind of emotions and how I felt. That I didn't even allow myself to journal or to ask deeper questions. And many people was telling me, are you really going to quit? Are you really going to let this happen just because you are, let's say, stubborn in your own ways? And they were judging me. And I said,
Mm.
yes, I'm going to do it because that's my integrity. Because that is the way I believe you have to educate a person. You have to allow them to think. You have to give them tools to get to the answer and to understand what is happening and why are they studying whatever it is the subject that I'm giving. So
Yeah.
we don't have that time to reflect. The body keeps the score, just
Yeah.
like the book, just like the book, and it will pick one time or one season where you feel relaxed. Why?
Yeah.
Because you don't have the walls, because
Yeah.
you are letting yourself be free and you are letting yourself, let's say, enjoy, but the body has something to detoxify, so it will do it. No.
Absolutely, and it's quite interesting because you're reminding me of that time for rest. It helps us to really connect into to our intuition, and it's a meditative state, that space of calm, right? Where and then that's where the body starts to recover. So it's quite interesting because that's where your intuition is coming out. But it's exactly what I was saying. We tend to overschedule ourselves. We don't have time. And I think we've been taught to suck it up and move on. And that's very much an ancestral thing because our ancestors didn't have time to process those emotions. And the only way to work through that was to distract ourselves and get into the busyness of work because it just kind of like, or the busyness of life. And it's quite interesting because COVID actually helped a lot of people in the sense that people that keep themselves busy, whether it's through work or helping other people instead of helping themselves, that we tend to it's a bypass because if we're busy out there, we don't have time to look in here and to reflect on okay, what do I need to work with? What traumas do I need to work through? And that's why a lot of the times when we rest, and so I don't know if I've told you this, but I think when I was 21 and I came traveling to Europe, um, I felt a little bit kind of like I arrived in London, felt a little bit claustrophobic in London, and then ended up in Scotland. But what I did was I was starting to feel a little bit kind of like, I don't really suffer from depression, but I was starting to feel a little bit low. So what did I do? I got myself 3 jobs. I worked in an office, I worked in a pub, and then I worked in a nightclub because like I'm 21, like my body, like it's fine, right? And I managed to sustain that for 3 months. So I'd have Thursday nights off and I'd have the full of Sunday off. Okay.
Mm.
Fridays, I would start at my job at 7 o'clock in the morning, my office job. I walk straight in, I get to the bus home at the end of my office job. The bus would drop me right outside the nightclub. Okay, and the nightclub paid me cash in hand, so it didn't affect my taxes at that time. And what happened is I'd walk straight in, like the bus stop literally was outside the nightclub, and I'd walk straight into happy hour.
Mm.
Okay, I'd go upstairs, I'd change my shirt because I was ready, and I'd walk straight into happy hour, right? At 6 o'clock. Then after that, I'd work straight through until like 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd get home. And because you're so like buzzed, I wouldn't fall asleep until 3. So I used to work about 21 hours on a Saturday, and then Sunday I'd be off, and then it was the only night that it was off. So we'd go out with my friends, right? And I've sustained that for 3 months. But then I had a friend come to visit me, and I took a week off. I got so sick, so sick, so sick that I couldn't even sit on my bum. I actually had to lie down. I got such a bad cold. My whole body was sore. My muscles were sore. And I couldn't move. I actually had to say to her, hey, this is how you get into town. This is where my food is. You're going to have to make it yourself, kind of a thing, because it was that time where your body went, okay, it's time to rest. Now let's recoup. Let's start to rebuild, because you're running on empty here quite a bit. So it was quite interesting in that we tend to do that, right?
And it is the word that is, or the emotion that is associated with a cold and with this kind of disease that you suffer is not loving yourself.
Yeah.
So rejecting yourself, no? Or rejecting
Absolutely.
having time for you, and then finding ways to not have time for you, no?
Yeah.
So this is the rejection that many times we face when we are sick. I mean, the emotions work in a way that they will look for an outlet, and they will look for a space, whatever it is. It's 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, or 1 or 2 weeks. That depends on any one of us, and the design that we also allow. But once you have time, the disease will present to us what we haven't been dealing with, the kind of emotions that we need to ask and just allow them to be felt, because it's okay. Because also we have been trained not to feel okay with those kind of emotions. We feel that, why are you going to feel that? No, and we feel asked by other people and judged by other people. And sometimes it's other people, sometimes it's your own inner critic that is just telling you these kind of ruminating words, and you are creating a dialogue in your own head. So we create the culture medium, as Bruce Lipton says. We create the culture medium for our genes also to be turned on or turned off, depending on what you are going to develop, because we feed them with the kind of ingredients that it needs to develop the disease. No? And overall, what we need to understand is that we all have intuition. Even though you don't want to accept it, and even though you say, well, my intuition is not really developed. Yes, probably it's not really developed because you haven't allowed the time, no? Because you haven't allowed to be creative, to be expressed, to be, let's say, skillful. Because as you mentioned at the beginning, when we were speaking, intuition is like a muscle. If you don't exercise it, if you don't allow it to be expressed and you shut it down, you won't have that kind of ability, and you will feel that you are different from other people, but you are not different. We all have this intuitive system. It is designed for you, not for me, not for anyone else, not for the society, not for anyone. But you have to find out what kind of messages is your intuition telling you. No?
And run with them, no matter how crazy they look. Because when you are in alignment, and it's beautiful, because when something is expansive, it feels exciting, it feels good. It we know that it's like our body's constantly telling us what is in alignment, what's not, right? That resistance that we feel, that we override, is our body saying, this is not in alignment with me, whether it's the choices that we make in our lives or the choices of the food or what we're watching on TV. I can't watch horror movies anymore. It just doesn't feel good in my body, for example. It's very, very interesting in that aspect of it. But when we are following our intuition and we are in the flow of life, things become easier, things become exciting. Time actually seems to kind of like, speed up because we're doing the things that we love. And that aspect of intuition, of trusting it no matter, following it without expectation, is important. Because how many times, and I bet we've all done this, where we've gone like, I should have listened. I should have said that. I shouldn't have stepped in that. I should have stayed home. So it's looking at that aspect of the other side of that coin, is completely following that intuition without the desire for an outcome, but rather than enjoying kind of like we all have a vision of where we're wanting to get to or how we're wanting to feel. But the how we get there is the intuitive part that shows up as opportunities for us to get to where we are, which is important. So it's quite a bit of a change from, I think we used to kind of like forcing an outcome if we want that outcome, but it's starting to change into that kind of like collaborative kind of like, okay, my intuition is telling me that I need to go to this, library today, or I need to meet up with this person, or this is an alignment. It's following that, because you can actually feel that very much in our bodies when we're doing that as well.
Yes. And I was thinking, how can we help people to understand or to exercise their own intuition? What would be your recommendations in terms of spiritual wisdom, let's say, that people can do? Three things that they can do to exercise their intuition.
So one of them is kind of like really check in with your body, right? And we call this of knowing what a yes and a no feels like, right? So if you take some time, close your eyes, breathe into your body, kind of a thing, and say, for example, test yourself, see how it feels, and say, ask your body the question, okay, the grass is green. See how that feels. Does it feel like yes? Where does it feel yes? Where does it feel expansive? And then you tell yourself, okay, the sky has, orange polka dots, and your whole system will know that is a lie. That's not in alignment. That doesn't feel good. So it's like, where are you feeling that? How is that feeling? And then trusting that. So that's one way of kind of like really using your body as that GPS kind of system. Another way is to completely drop into your heart. So you can place your hand over your heart and then just like sit in and connect into your heart as if it were a person, which is another aspect of you, and ask the question and allow whatever crazy thoughts come into your mind to be that voice of the heart and follow that. Right. So that's another way of doing it. The most expansive way of doing it is, it's actually, the more you rest, the more intuitive you become. Meditation is another way of doing it, but then you could follow your day going, okay, like, checking in and saying, okay, what is one thing that I can do today that will bring me closer to my vision? What does that look like? And then do that. Sometimes waking up in the morning, especially on the weekends, it's almost kind of like one of those things. It's like, if I could do something today that would bring my most excitement, what would that be? And then doing that. And it is about that space of kind of like following that inner GPS that is there. And once you get that feeling, trust it. So a lot of questions that I get asked is, what's the difference between my intuition and my ego? Right? How do I know who's talking? Right? Because at the risk of sounding schizophrenic, we have so many voices in our minds. We have our voice, we have our ego, we have sometimes a parent, sometimes a teacher, sometimes a mentor, sometimes society, giving us all this information, our guides, our ancestors. Like there's a lot that's going on. Our body is talking to us constantly as well. So there's a lot of voices going on in our minds. So it's like, how do we know? And usually what happens is that first impression, that first kind of like thought that pops into your head is usually your intuition. It takes your ego 3 seconds afterwards to start to tell you, nah, it's not going to work.
Mm. Yeah.
So it's almost being guided by that first kind of like intuitive hit, as we call it, when we're moving through that. But meditating, journaling is a great way of accessing your intuition. Yeah, I have a few courses on how to do that. There's so many ways, because our intuition it's not even an extension of our five senses. It's the first aspect of our five senses. So a lot of us are either intuitive in the sense of, some of us feel, some of us know, some of us see, some of us hear. It depends. And usually you can tell which is somebody's dominant. They're called clear abilities. So it's a clear knowing, or a clear is by the way they speak. So if somebody says to you, "Oh, I see what you're saying," they're more than likely clairvoyant. If somebody says, "Oh, I can feel that," they're clairsentient. So they're very empathic. So they work very much in that sense of feeling. And if somebody says to you, "Look, I know how you feel," it's very much an inner knowing. And that one sometimes is the hardest one to determine what is me and what is ego, because it just feels like you're having this intuition. My strongest ones, right, are a knowing and the vision. So I have a lot of kind of like, I see a lot of visions, but that is the brain. Remember how we were talking about the brain outputs it? It's the brain gives you the palette of whatever it is to create that picture that you're needing, whether it's a feeling, a knowing, a hearing, or a seeing that comes in. So it's very, very interesting, but it's the best way to do it is get to know your body, get to know your mind, get to trust that. Because a lot of the times we look for outside validation. So sometimes we know the direction we're needing to go in, but we place that trust on somebody else that we think is the expert. But knowing that most of the times we are the expert within that, and it's trusting that. And it's okay to ask for outside help, because some people are more in tune in a different field than we are. So for example, for medical advice, I'd like that, I would come to you, because you've got that is the substance, the palette that you navigate with, that your muscle is strongest in. So if I want to learn to play tennis, I'll go to a tennis player. If I want to learn how to swim, I'll go to a swimmer, because they are more versed in that. So their intuition will come through very much in that sense. So our intuition and our expertise is based very much on the lives that we've experienced and the themes that we've experienced in life.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I think that those are very, very strong advice and suggestions for people to develop their own intuition. And I also think that myself, I consider that I have this inner knowing also, and the clarity. I mean, I'm also a visual person. So I usually, my way of knowing if something aligns with me or not is just picturing myself in that situation, in that interaction, in that kind of job or whatever it is, and trying to see if I will enjoy it or not. Just
Yeah.
that. And just that tells me, no, I'm not going to feel good. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to take this job.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do what they are asking or whatever. And the next one is this asking, asking my body
Yeah.
to react, to give me the answer, as you mentioned. And
Yeah.
and this is not as difficult as it might sound, because many people will feel like, how can I do it? Well, ask the question. Ask the question. How will I feel if I take this job? How will
Yeah.
I feel if I go to this event, or if I go and meet this guy or this girl or whatever it is?
Mm.
How will I feel? And just
Yeah.
allow a little bit of time. And as you mentioned, the first answer is the one that counts. The second
Yeah.
is not gonna be your intuition. It's gonna be the
Yeah.
ego, as you clearly mentioned,
Hmm.
because the second one will give you a complaint also.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the distinction. The ego always gets a complaint or something that is negative there, and it
Yeah.
adds that dressing, let's say, to give you the
Yeah.
hint that is not your intuition and is your ego talking.
Absolutely.
So I think that with this we can wrap up the topic, and we can help people in the way we wanted
Hmm.
to to exercise, to grow their own muscles in terms of the intuitive system. You have to trust that you have it. It
Yeah.
is there. It might be dormant. It might be a little bit lazy, let's say, because you haven't been able to exercise it, because you have
Hmm.
been primed by media and noise and all of those things, and the multiple voices that you mentioned also. So let's just shut down the voices and let our heart speak, because he's the one that we should listen to.
Absolutely. Love that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we will listen to each other in our next episode. And of course, ask us questions if you want to, if you want us to help you develop your intuition. No?
Yeah. Or if there's any topic that you'd like us to cover, we're also happy
No?
to do that as well. So absolutely make the suggestions.
Yes. Thank you, Natasha. And thank you for giving us these three very important ways to develop our intuition.
Beautiful.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye, everybody.